I joke around all the time when I get done with the podcast and I go up to the camera and I go, oh no, I didn't press record. It's kind of like my joke to everybody. Yeah. And I know, sadly, one of these times I'm going to walk up and I'll be like, it's really not recording. Oh. Like, and it's going to be like an hour-long podcast. And I just hope it's one between like me and Dustin or somebody who's down here all the time and not like somebody who comes on one time or something.
Yeah.
It'd be terrible.
Like the Joe Rogan Experience where it's 3-hour-long podcast and you're just like, yeah, so this isn't going to happen.
Dude, it would be terrible. I'd feel so bad. We did get our mics in. I ordered in some mics finally. Didn't have them set up yet. I wanted to have them set up for this, but just didn't get around to downloading the software and stuff. But that'll be fun. So we'll have you on again when we get the mics.
Well, we talked about doing this for a while, and I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And you're like, dude, I've never known you to not just be able to talk. So
Exactly.
All right.
So what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Live Beyond Average podcast. I'm Jordan Miller. I'm here with a really good friend. I'm trying not to say the term like old friend because that would incline that we're old.
Well,
so
I feel it.
Yeah. So a friend of mine that we have been friends since college. We met in college, Jared Thomas, and it's been a fun journey up until this point. I mean, what year did we? I mean, we met in like 2008, but we weren't really friends then yet.
Yeah. I was an athletic training student for college, so we met when you were still playing basketball.
So 07, 08-ish.
Yeah. And then it wasn't until we both found ourselves on the track team that we were like, and even then, like I started out as a distance runner, and then we're like, no, let's. I wanted to do hurdles, so we're like, well, we gotta get you a better sprinter.
Yep.
So we started doing sprint workouts together, and then I don't know how, like that runner's high feeling where you're just so gassed at the end and all this endorphins flowing, and then you just start doing like silly, crazy stuff, and you're just like, we just kind of all bonded around. There's a group of us.
We did. We had a group on that track team that like, we did have a pretty strong bond. It was cool. And that was something that I didn't get being on the basketball team. Yeah. So it was a cool experience for me, going from like not having, you're close with your basketball guys, but it was only on the basketball court for me. And so then when I was on the track team, it was like a total different experience. So it was pretty cool.
It was, I mean, the motivation, the camaraderie was there. I mean, those acceleration workouts sucked. I mean, they were good, but at the same time,
they were
like
hard.
I remember our coach came in and he's like, I don't know, every time I come in here to see how you guys are doing, he's like, you look like you've just gone to war. I'm like, he's like, you come out of that bathroom and you just look like you've been in a war. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I was probably just throwing up. Like, I think at least every day I threw up once.
Dude, and for people who don't know, so the acceleration program that we utilized it because we went to a smaller college. We didn't have an indoor track. And in South Dakota, if you've been to South Dakota, it gets a little cold in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So we utilized a program called acceleration. It's basically a giant treadmill that has a massive incline.
40% incline and like 27.8 miles per hour.
Yeah, so basically it goes higher than what you'll ever want to run and faster than you can run. And then it has a bar in the front, so you can actually over-speed train yourself by holding onto that bar. And the methods behind it are obviously that you're pushing at those different inclines and you're pushing at those higher rates of speed that you're obviously gaining acceleration within your body. And the program works really well.
I think you got to like... We do speed tests for 6 seconds. I think you got 23 miles per hour for 6 seconds.
Yeah, didn't we all get...
I got 22 and a half.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you got 23 and I had like 23 and a half or something like that.
No, I didn't make 23. I tried.
Okay.
It's literally fast enough that it melts your shoes.
It gets hot. It's insane.
It's so... Like, we had some of the... like, Chad Greenway from the Vikings, his cousins were there because we were in Mitchell. And I like... They're very gifted athletes. And they came in and were doing some of it because I interned there for... Well, we both did.
Yep.
Interned there for a summer, and like they were trying to speed test at like 24 miles an hour, and literally came off, and their shoes were smoking.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, I think the fastest guy at that one was Jamie Spurley.
Yeah.
And he was before our time at Dakota Wesleyan, but he actually qualified for like the USA.
Yeah.
As a 100-meter dasher.
Yeah.
Sprinter, and I think he ran 24 even wasn't it? 23 and a half, 24 even?
It was 24 even or 24.5.
Because I remember me and Jimmy and Dalton were both like a half mile per hour under what he could do. We were trying to hit his 24 flat, and I think we were all at 23 or 23 and a half.
Yeah.
It was crazy, man. What a fun program. But like you said, when you're suffering with that group, like that's a cool thing. Was we had our our 4 or 5 sprinters that we trained together, and we did that program together. And when you're in there just getting worked, and man, and like that you still have to like lift afterwards, like you know what I mean? Like it was just lift. Yeah, it wasn't much lifting because we were just so gassed. But it was, dude. It's just like when you have that camaraderie and that suffering together, and like what that builds. It was pretty cool. And at the time, we thought we were mature people, but looking back, we were immature. When it comes to relationships and just in general.
And that's actually. You hear it all the time, right? Embrace the suck, and that's I mean, from a military perspective, we talk about that all the time. It just helped us get through those hard times. But I did a public speaking event where I talked about this a little bit with that embrace the suck. It's when we're in there, like you learn to rely on people because that's the only thing you have.
There's nothing else.
I mean, all we had was, to get you through it is, man, I got to keep. I mean, we were doing relays, right?
Yep.
I remember we were trying to break the school record.
Yep.
In Lincoln for indoor track, and they have that track that sets up the corner, so it's always faster, right?
Yeah, it has the banked corners.
Banked corners.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of very few in the country.
Yeah.
That are like that, but Lincoln, the
Devaney Center.
Yep. Down in the Cornhuskers.
Oh yeah.
We got to run that. It was cool. What a cool experience for us.
I mean, we did some very unhealthy things.
No.
I mean, a lot of supplements at once. I mean, nothing illegal or anything like that, but we all felt miserable afterwards from just overload of...
Well, we were so
know.
young and raw with stuff and like didn't know, and there wasn't the research capabilities at our fingertips that we have now. And so yeah, we would drink a Red Bull with a scoop of Jacked 3D.
Yeah.
And this is what, like 09, 10?
Yeah.
This is 09. And so...
It was very new and very...
It was stupid.
It was very dumb.
Because, like, people literally died from drinking Jacked 3D.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't regulated back then.
Man, that bus ride back, though, we were all just kind of sitting there, like, just rocking back and forth, like, oh my god, I feel terrible.
Yeah. I mean... Well, like, I remember Dalton, one of our 400 guys, and he was kind of our fast anchor guy. And, like, yeah, he would just... No, he was our starter, wasn't he? He was our starter. And Jimmy was our anchor.
Yep.
And yeah, I remember he just yacked hard after that.
Well, and I mean, the thing that I remember most about that is that I was the third leg, which traditionally is the slowest one because your starter gets out as far ahead as you can. That second leg tries to maintain. Third one is where we can if we lose a little bit, that's fine, and then your fastest guy is the end to just give it everything you have.
And when you say slow, though, in college...
It's not
slow, yeah, because
it's just comparably...
It might be a half of a second or a second split. So if everybody's running 48, you might be a 49-2, which is,
I'm just making a mess here.
Nice.
Don't mind me.
That's a party foul, spilling the secret in here. But, yeah, I mean, the camaraderie built there.
Well, and I remember, like I said, I was at third leg for a 400-meter race. That's 2 laps around an indoor track, and that last corner, because those banked corners, you're down on the edge and it's angled, and I stepped inside the track, right, and there's a line judge right there, and I thought, oh man, I killed it, right? I DQ'd us. We're right here. We've been working really hard. I think it was conference.
It was. It was the conference championships. Yep.
We were right there, and we ended up. So I stopped. I let off the gas because I stepped out of bounds. I was like, man, all that weight is on me. And then I hear that. I mean, you can hear the rest of the team like finish. I'm like, all right, whatever. Might as well keep going. Finish. We ended up missing the record by like 0.2 or 0.3 or something.
Stupid close, yeah.
And I felt the weight of that, right? Like, man, I let up for 3 steps, and that's all that it takes in a race that fast.
Yep.
But it was like, no, the guys were right there, like, no, we're all, exactly. I could have done a little, 0.3. Everyone's like,
well, I could have done that
faster. Yeah, I could have done that.
And yeah, and when you don't get what you want, as an athlete, you never look at one guy. Like, if
No.
you're an actual athlete and you're competitive, you always look inward of what you could have done yourself. You're like, well, I know I was tired around that corner, and I was battling myself to go faster and not slow down. Like, when you're competitive in that sense, like, yeah, you always look at yourself as the...
Well, and to that point, like, we talk about, the value that sports bring to kids and stuff like that, right? That self-awareness piece that you're talking about right there. I mean, the ability to be able to do that and apply it to everything else in life, right? Self-awareness. When we're looking at, I mean, man, anything from, did I have a conversation right? Could I have done better here? Like, taking that ownership and looking for every situation, right? Self-awareness is huge in our world today. And I think that that's one of the things that we're truly, I don't want to say lacking. I mean, we probably are, but it's more of
I'd say we are.
I don't know that we know
that we are
right.
Yeah.
Man, it just kind of talks in circles, but that awareness of not being self-aware is
100% correct. 100% correct. And it's funny because I talk about this with a lot of my clients and younger athletes too. And it's funny that you brought it up because it's even been brought up in conversation more so in 2020.
Oh, man.
In my facility where I'm training people, like, it's been brought up way more. And I remember back in, April and May, I was training actually more athletes than I previously was, and it was because they had nowhere to go and nothing to do.
Right.
They weren't in school.
No track.
And exactly. There was nothing to do. They weren't in school. And I had this conversation with like multiple athletes, and I train a lot of like what I would call mid-tier athletes, and I train a couple very high-tier athletes. So I train a D1 volleyball player that plays in a major conference, and then I train some junior high kids, and then I train some, early freshman, sophomore kids, and then I train like a really good football player. So like that's probably a little bit more higher tier. So kind of a wide range of athletes. But the conversations with all of them, it's funny, come back to the same exact thing. And the lesson presented might be slightly different, but the subject matter is always the same. And there's like a lot of times it's that at the time, back in April and May, it was, hey, what are your friends doing? And all their athlete friends or teammates weren't doing anything. And it was like you could almost at that moment make that prediction of like, the kids in the next couple years who are going to be likely the ones to be the standout athletes, who make All-State, who get the scholarships. And if you look back at the correlation, I bet to 2020 is going to be those kids who they chose and their parents chose not to be slowed down by the current environment, and they pushed through and they put in the extra work when nothing else was going on, when it was hard to find gym space, when it was difficult to go against the grain. But those people put in the work, and I guarantee you in the next year or two, when we see the standout athletes, if you go up and interview every one of them, like, what were you doing in 2020 in like April, May, June, even in March? I guarantee they'll all be like, oh, I got a trainer, or I was in the gym, or I was doing that extra work, because they had the self-awareness that it was like, I'm going to be a champion. Like, I can train to be a champion right now. I can take advantage of this opportunity. Everybody else is sitting at home. I can step in here and make progress and like build a window of, okay, I might be the same as everybody else when it comes to skill level. I can build a gap.
Well, and I think it's an interesting point that you bring up there, is that self-awareness is kind of rooted in the concept of vulnerability, right? Like, in order to be self-aware, it's a hard thing to measure, because if you are self-aware, then you're always going to be harder on yourself and like forcibly like measure yourself lower. But if you're not self-aware, then everything's great. The sky is always blue and I'm perfect, right? So
that's interesting. It's true though.
So having that self-awareness is really rooted in the concept and understanding of what vulnerability means and living it, right? And then I think that's Dr. Brene Brown. She always references that you can't have courage until you have vulnerability. And we think about that like in a military perspective, that makes sense, right? All these people who have these medals of valor and things like that. The easy one for me to think of is like Private Dawes from like Hacksaw Ridge and stuff like that, right? He made the choice to go into battle and keep going back after these people with no weapon, right? That was a vulnerability to go into a war zone with no weapon, but that's what made it so courageous, because there was that inherent vulnerability that had to be overcome. Without that vulnerability, he's just the same as any other medic. Mm-hmm. So I think that when we come back to our self-awareness, we get this mindset of vulnerability, right? But it's really more of the courage to face ourselves and to face our own weaknesses so that we know where to build and grow and to see where to do it, or to see where to put effort and emotional resources into that growth.
Dude, and it's kind of funny that you say this, because you really got me thinking when you're making some of those points. Was, you you bring up vulnerability, and 3/4 of the guys listening are probably like,
right,
like kind of shut down or not listen, or because you bring up vulnerability, and the last thing, I like to bring up stuff for men in this podcast at times too, just because I know a big portion of our listeners are dudes, but it's funny because as a guy, you don't think about being vulnerable as being very manly.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you made a very valid point when you were like, oh yeah, when you can be self-aware and bring out those vulnerabilities, it allows you to step up and have courage and take action. What did the soldier do? Well, that vulnerability allowed him to have the courage, and then do what with that courage? Take action with it. And so actually being vulnerable totally launches you to another level of being more manly.
Absolutely. So
it's the opposite.
I mean, it's deep rooted in the effective leadership. When we talk about different leadership strategies between transformational and servant leadership and all of this stuff, like, it's deep seated in there. But even when it comes to your personal relationships, when it comes to being a parent, being a whatever, I think back to when I was. The last 2.5 years has been a lot of growth for me, and it's gotten to the point where it's come to like a complete identity crisis within the last 2 years, 18 months, where I sat down at the kitchen table with my wife and I was like, is this the person you know me to be? Like, my grandma used to refer to me as her tender-hearted little lamb.
Yep.
And I was always very soft-hearted, nice to the extreme, things like that. And I was like, is this the person that you know? Have you ever known me to be this person? She's like, no, that's not right. And then you get to look at, I mean, I just broke down and started crying.
Yeah.
Right? And you start to look at different things, and we'll talk about that in a second, but that incongruence with who you are supposed to be, like who you're programmed to be and who you're living yourself to be. And I think that we've talked about this before too, but I mean, that disagreement causes a lot of issue in life and in your relationships. I remember
and mainly the relationship with yourself.
Well, right.
Which then fingers off into all your personal relationships.
So exactly. Like, I remember being a parent is hard, and I remember my dad giving me a lot of feedback on, you're being too hard on your son. You're being too hard on him. He's just a kid. You're being too hard on me. You can't expect perfection and things like that. And this was all while I was going through this.
At the same time.
I call it my identity crisis type moment, and it didn't really. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get through this one. Every time it comes back, but it didn't set in until we were having tacos one night, and his taco shell fell apart, and all the taco stuff falls out, and he just started crying as a 4-year-old because it was a mess now.
Yep.
Right, and he broke down and cried, and I had this realization that that's not that's not him as a 4-year-old. That's what I've forced him to live, right? So there was that self-awareness right there of saying, this has caused an emotional response because a taco fell apart. Mm-hmm. Tacos fall apart all the time. Like, I don't think I can go to Qdoba without getting a taco to fall apart.
Yeah, I'm 32 and I destroy my taco 90% of the time.
And I still cry when it's a Qdoba taco.
Yeah.
but that self-awareness there of like, wow, this isn't him. He's living my issues.
Sure.
And that's right. So that self-awareness was there, and it had to be something that I fixed, because I'm not going to be able to force the appropriate emotional response to a 4-year-old who doesn't understand emotions, and it's just an emotional response because he hasn't lived up to my expectations of what neat is because a taco fell apart, right? So that's that kind of got deep a little bit, but that's a self-awareness thing that I have to figure out and go, okay, how am I handling situations?
Yes.
And I think that even comes back to one of the things that I had to learn was, what are your core values, right? And it's so easy for us to give these superficial faith, family, country, like those are my core values.
Right.
Right. But you have to look at what truly permeates everything you do.
Yes.
Right? When I was going through this, I had some great friends, counselors who were helping me through this situation, and you can say that, but you should be able to see a line, like a thread, golden thread through everything you do, that you can see those values through everything you've done.
Yeah, and those ones you mentioned might be things that are at the top of your priority list and very important to you, but that's different than
your core
value.
So, in a way that the way that it had to work for me is that there's different resources that have like lists of hundreds of different values that have been identified through research and stuff like that. And it's a very qualitative analysis process to be able to just highlight them, right? This is one that resonates to me. This is one that resonates to me. And put them on a Post-it note. And then you start looping them or grouping them together and say, okay, what is the overwhelming thing on this one, right? What is the overwhelming thing, right? So even when we talk about faith, that's an easy one, right? Like, no, faith is a core value for me. I love God. My faith is big to me. But that might not be your core value, because that also goes into, okay, what does faith and family and friendships and all that stuff have in common? Well, to me, faith is having a relationship with God, and having a relationship with family, and having a relationship with friends. So to me, I can say that the thing that ties all of those together is a relationship.
So relationship is actually
the
core value.
Yep.
Yes.
And then in my faith, I can see that, nope, that supports my core value of relationship because I have a relationship with God. Building these friendships, these deep-seated, I can go back to all my, times when I was struggling the most is because I didn't feel like I had that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. High school was really hard for me. I didn't feel like I had a lot of friends. I didn't have that relationship. I was out of alignment with my core values. And one of the other ones throughout this process was that personal excellence. I'm always, lifelong learner. I always love to be learning new things. Like, school was actually really fun for me. I really hated the homework part of it because it just felt like busy work and an ineffective use of my time. But to sit there and listen to professors and learn things, and like, I'm a big consumer of podcasts for that reason. And like,
you like information pouring in.
Yeah, or even having that self-awareness, right? Like, this summer we did the archery fitness league.
Yes.
And the way that you put it out is like, hey, we're gonna do a thing that we have an opportunity to get better at your archery, get better at your fitness, and have fellowship with some new guys, right? Well, that hits my two core values of personal excellence. It allows me to get better at being an archer. It allows me to get better at being a physically fit hunter, and I get to build relationship.
Yes.
So knowing those helps me go, that's a valuable place for me to invest my time and energy and emotions.
Because it feeds your two main core values.
My core values are in alignment there.
Yes. Yep.
So being able to really find those for yourself, and being, again, tying back to that self-awareness, being able to say, yes, these are it, but are there deeper values, right?
Yes.
And then that gives you meaning in life. And that gives you I'm going to mess up the analogy, but it gives you purpose.
Yep.
Right? So it's just...
Because you're going to be able to go out and search out and find those things that feed you. Like you gave the perfect example with the Archery Fitness League, right? Like because you have found your core values, you were able to find things that you need to help propel them and help feed you, which then gives you purpose. I'm just basically restating what Jared just said, just quickly.
Right.
And by feeding, what does that cause, right? That causes the better relationship. That causes maybe a little bit more happiness. And so it's a snowball effect. We talk about that on the podcast all the time, right? Building momentum. Doing things that help you build momentum. Acting helps you build momentum. So what did Jared do in that situation, right? He acted to find core values, which then enabled him to make decisions to act on finding activities that feeds his core values, right? Am I wrong here? Right?
No,
here,
absolutely.
Right here? And then that's, and he hasn't gotten into the next portion of that, but what does that do, right? That builds momentum for him. It builds momentum for his mental health, his physical health, his relationships, which builds positivity, which builds happiness. Like we talk about a lot of those things on the podcast on just how to, get out of ruts or how to be a better husband, a better coworker, in your career, in your business. And that is what these things do.
Well, and I think that it's an interesting point that okay, I might get a little far out on a limb here, but
sure, let's go for it.
But in our very superficial world right now with social media, and we mostly know people by their virtual identities and stuff like that. That we don't, that we're looking for meaning, right? In the olden days, before internet.
The olden days,
right?
The olden dial-up.
Yeah.
We talking the 90s? What are we talking?
Trying to call up someone on the phone and.
Okay. Anyway, let's get rocking.
Okay, I have a quick story, and I'll get back to it. Right, back in dial-up days, I was trying to, because we only had the one phone line, and then dial-up took that phone line. I was a teenager, so I was like, I'm gonna go call this girl and ask her out. But I was really nervous, so I crawled up on the roof of my parents' house with our cordless phone, and I'm sitting there talking on the phone, and just like I'm on the roof, it's middle of the night. Not middle of the night, it was like 8, but it was winter, so it was,
felt like
it was dark. But I'm sitting there and I'm nervous, and I'm just like, okay. All of a sudden, you're just on the phone, and all of a sudden you hear, eee, and you're just like, really? Built up this whole thing, and all it's just going to get ruined by a die. Anyway.
Yep, because of the single phone line. That's great.
So I digress. Anyway, back before this social media concept came along, people would gather to support a cause.
Yes.
Right? When we talk about church, right? People gather to support the worshiping of God, or the army, or parades, or things like that. People would gather for a cause. But we've transitioned into a life where people wake up and go to search for that community, right? Mm-hmm. I get on Twitter, I'm a part of that community, but I don't have a cause. I go on Twitter looking for a cause. That's why we have the trending list, because I'm like, oh, here's a cause I can get behind. And it creates such a toxic environment, and it's so void of meaning, right? There's no meaning for it. C.S. Lewis talks about before something can be, it has to have meaning. And he uses the example of like a blinker, right? So you take your car to the mechanic, and you're like, oh, I got it checked up or whatever, and I'm driving on, I'm like, hey, I forgot to have you check this. Can you check this light for me? So I turn the blinker on, and the mechanic says, yep, it's working. No, it's not. Yeah, it's working. No, it's not. Now it's working. And you're like, okay, but you don't understand the meaning that it is supposed to flicker like that, right? Before something can be effective, it has to have meaning. So when we look at having those core values, it really assigns meaning to it, right? So we get those core values lined out and start to find those things that we're threading through everything we do, and then it builds meaning. Mm-hmm. And to take that one step further, without meaning you can't have purpose, right? Or purpose being order. So we look at, say you're, I'm gonna struggle on this one because I got a little bit too far out.
I like how you just call it out there. Yeah. I love it.
Vulnerability.
Yep.
Self-awareness.
Exactly.
I live it. So we have all this, we're going to build this table, this table that we got. We got all the different pieces of it.
Okay.
Right? And they're all laying there. But until you know that there's the meaning of those pieces is that they're supposed to build a table, they can't fulfill their purpose. Right? Mm-hmm. So you can't have purpose without meaning. Like same thing, you go to clean your room. Right? I got to clean this up. But that assumes that there's a meaning behind why you have your editing stuff over there and your supplement stuff back here and your podcast station here, right? It assumes that there's a meaning for why there is before there can be purpose, before there can be order.
Right.
So as we're looking for those opportunities to connect, to really fulfill our lives, we've so often hit the easy button of turning to social media and trying to go find those causes that, you know what, I wake up in the morning, I want that connection. So I flip open Twitter and there's trending lists. I'm like, oh, I could get behind that cause. So I go looking for that connection. When instead, if we find those core values that fulfill our lives, that gives us meaning. And then when we're realizing that meaning, we can assign purpose to it because we understand what the meaning we're trying to fulfill. We understand what's going to give us a fruitful experience, get that motivation, get that snowball rolling, and then we can go out and seek those opportunities like the fitness league. I'm trying to. It's making sense in my head.
No, it is. Yep. Keep going. Keep going.
Woo! You get that meaning assigned, and then now all of a sudden it's created purpose. Now we have that community. Now we have that reason to keep going.
Yes.
Right? Same thing when we go back to our track and our relationships and things like that. We've found that meaning. I am meant to be this third leg of this thing.
My apologies.
Yes.
I couldn't hear what you said.
It's because I wasn't talking to you.
Siri's very rude.
Siri, she was in it though. She was woo.
She was in it. Track.
I'm meant to be that third leg of this relay. So growing together, finding people that also knew their meaning, and it was a mutual meaning, created purpose. Now we grew together as a group. Now we have that. We're gonna keep each other going. We're gonna keep going because we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah. What do championship teams all have in common? The coaches do a great job of getting every guy on that team to work towards the same goal and understanding their purpose.
Right.
Right? Because not everybody can throw the ball.
Yep.
Not everybody can make a block. So everybody has to have their purpose in order to win the football game.
And
simple analogy, but what a simple one to look at that actually and kind of understand.
Yeah.
Like we all have these different purposes and it has to have meaning behind it.
Well, even to take this back to the Bible, right? Paul writes about we all have different purposes. We all have different purposes in the ministry, Should we say to a foot, cut it off because it's not a hand? Right. No, the body has to function all as one. Right? There's different purposes for different things, but as long as you understand your purpose, have that self-awareness for what you're supposed to do and your purpose for being a part of it, now you can function properly. And that's where I think that we get. So I guess if I were to title this conversation, I would say the secret to life. It's not really a secret.
No.
It's you just have to look for it.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure map that you just have to go looking for, right? But understanding that self-awareness and understanding your purpose and knowing that your purpose might be different helps connect you to the thing.
And the fact that it might change over time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like just because you're at, like you talked about, where you were at 2 years ago leading into now. That is a moment and a stage, right? And those moments and stage you will grow. I mean, the hope is always, right, that we talk about growth. The hope is always that you'll grow through that stage and out of that stage into your next one, which may, your core values probably will always be generically close to the same, but you still might see a change in those over time. And
your core values should stay pretty close to the same, but you'll be able to, again, if we go to that, what do these all have in common, right? Yes, because 10 years ago, I still had the 2 core values. I may not have understood them fully yet.
Yes.
But I still had the same 2 core values. Now I have kids, right? So, but that also plays a part in there. It just changed a little bit because we mature. We start to see it in a different light, but it's still like, oh, right. It's still building, you know. So you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing aligning with these?
Yep.
Right? I mean, I think about, I used to tell myself, like, man, back in, 10 years ago when we started this thing, right? Like, I remember well, before you even came up with the concept of run to gun, right? I remember we took off school that one day. We went archery hunting in the morning, and then on the way back we're like, dude, it's gonna be a nice day. I don't really feel like going to class. Let's just buzz quick over to Murdo, and we went grouse hunting that afternoon.
Yep.
And we did that, and it's like, man, that was a great time. So I used to think to myself, like, I just have an addictive personality. When I do something fun, I just want to keep doing it. I'll keep doing it over and over again, right? Even if if we get grouse or if we don't get a deer or whatever, it's fun, right? I'll keep going back, and it is that opiate, that natural opiate thing. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna keep coming back to it for more.
Yep.
But now that I can look back and see that that's not necessarily what it was.
Right.
It was that there was a connection, right?
Right.
We had an opportunity to build our relationship, right? That 2-hour drive from
Murdo to Mitchell
yep. was, I mean, the things that we would talk about, the fun that we had, all that we would do, and then you go and, I don't even know if we got any grouse. I think we shot some. I don't know if
I don't even remember that.
But we got to have those deep conversations then, right? And you're like,
you remember the travel. You remember those things.
Well, I remember the corner post where we were standing here. You were telling me
I do too.
You were telling me about, man, what if you never really think, because we just got done being in track. Yeah. And you're like, you never really think about how much of a workout hunting really is. And then you're like, yeah. Like, man, I'm exhausted right now. Like, I haven't worked out in a while, but this is it, and then
mm-hmm.
and then it kind of built into, like, man, my grandpa, hasn't,
exactly.
how the whole thing started.
Right.
Right? And we look at it and it's like, it wasn't probably the best. I mean, it's different going out for an afternoon of grouse hunting than it is, going to New Mexico for an elk hunt.
Yeah.
But the connection was there. And that's where I'll keep going back. Like, I'll go and walk 22 miles and pack out a deer for 5 miles because I had the opportunity to do that with my brother.
Yes.
Right? Because I had the opportunity to make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go and hunt, and I'll go and, like, we can go hunt, and that day we went antelope hunting, archery antelope hunting.
Yeah.
And you almost made me walk back because there was rattlesnake.
Yep.
But
we went terrible.
Yeah. I actually got another rattlesnake doing that this year, but neither here nor there. But we went out and scouted for mule deer that morning, and it was one that you had tracked for. I think you called him a wizard, right?
Yep.
That we tracked him for 3 years.
That was that one right there.
Yep. But we saw it like. Yeah. I didn't have a bow. I didn't have a license. I didn't have anything. But it was just the opportunity to be there. Yeah. To be connected. To like, look, it's not about the outcome. It's about the journey.
Yep. And that's why, like, for myself, figuring out my core values and things like that, how, I had to struggle through different moments of my life in where, I was doing things that had relationships, because relationships is one of my core values as well, and how I, it fed it, and then I did some stuff that, it was mostly work by myself, and I didn't need the relationship to thrive in the work environment, and I was miserable.
Right.
And then you go back realizing, like, oh, what I need is the relationship. And it's funny because the relationships are tiring, and doing, and building all the relationships, and for what I do in the sense of, okay, training clients one-on-one, right? That's huge relationships. It totally feeds me. It's very tiring and taxing, and I do get, tired with it in the sense of, like, just emotionally tired. But overall, without it, I'm far worse off than with it, because it totally feeds actually into who I actually am, not the, what we think. We talked about who we're programmed to be and who we actually are. all those relationships that I have, the online training, the relationships you build with our following on our social media, all those relationships feed that one of those core values that I actually need to really build that positivity and to give back deeper thoughts that I think about that I put back out. Yep. And so all those things feed a greater cause for what I need in order to put back. So I have to receive it for myself from those relationships and give. So it's a give and take thing. That's what a relationship is, right? So and a lot of people don't always realize that, like from a client basis, right? They hire me. They're paying me to be around me. They're paying me to train them. Right. They're training me for my expertise. All those different things, right? They're paying me to help them get into shape to achieve their goals. But there's also this compounded effect of I'm not just receiving a check from them. Right. I'm not just receiving money from them, right? I'm also receiving a relationship, because very seldom do I train somebody that I don't build a relationship with.
Right.
It maybe has happened a time or two over 10 years where you just don't connect with somebody.
Right.
But it's almost always a relationship built that I'm receiving. I always consider myself much more the beneficiary from the relationship where they're paying to receive a service, but what I receive is way more than monetary.
And that's why you're good at what you do, right? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
So having found a profession that allows you to be filling yourself as much as you're pouring out is. That.
Yeah, and that allows me, like what you're getting to, is it allows my cup to be refilled so I can continue to pour out. And I've just, I've utilized that then in order to have the podcast or to have the show or whatever it is, or just to jump on a live on Facebook on our page and pour back out. Because that's what I feel like is one of my callings and my purposes, is to not just receive it in that sense and keep it for myself or just give it back to those few clients here and there. I want to give it to all, people who aren't a client, that aren't paying me for anything,
right,
but are still there. So
I had a thought.
Go for it. Maybe.
I lost it now.
You keep thinking. I'm gonna get into.
I just got distracted by the amount of gray on your beard.
It's a lot.
And then you're like, we're not old, but I'm like,
we're kind of old.
We're kind of old.
So you talked about yours were your two core values being relationship and give me the
personal excellence.
Personal excellence. And so like when we talked about that a little bit prior podcast, I had to stop and really think about a couple of my core values. And how relationships were definitely a big one. And it's funny because you talked about how you mentioned faith, family, friends, like those aren't really the core values. How you said, it was the relationships that were important to you. And so that's how the relationship with God fell into actually what faith. And so you tied into it was the relationship. And that's how character is for me. Like character was that big one for me. That is my main core value with relationships, because I love and feed off of trying to make really good decisions in my life. So that being, and it ties into all the things we talk about on the Live Beyond Average podcast or on our TV show, was, okay, I want to make good decisions. To me, character is making great decisions when nobody's around to see you.
Yep.
And so that falls into things that are really important to me, like a marriage. Making good decisions when my wife's not around to see me. You know what I mean? Or, or in hunting. So I think about things that are all important. I mean, I could say, oh, my marriage is my core value, or hunting. No, what makes hunting so great is, making really good decisions. You're out there by yourself. What a test of character.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, making those decisions when nobody's around to see you. Like not shooting that deer that's over the fence line, or whatever that is.
If there's an elk that walks through and you're deer hunting, like
exactly,
you're on private property.
You've never had that happen.
And so never once 3 weeks ago.
And so like character is that thing where it's again that confusing aspect of it. It could be hunting is my all those things. Well, it's actually what falls into hunting. I get to make a lot of good decisions and be challenged, or in my marriage or whatever that falls into character, or making sound decisions financially in my business. And so character feeds that, and making all those decisions.
And that's an interesting point that you bring up, is that just because that's how those fall into relationship for me, doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for everyone, right?
It's going to fall differently.
Yep, because to me, a lot of those things that you're talking about, to me feels like they fit into my personal excellence, right? Like I'm always trying to make the most informed decisions so that I can make the best decisions, right? So I have to make sure that I'm personally excellent in my knowledge and my ability to make good decisions. Now, that's a character thing for you. You define it as character, but that's
exactly.
fine.
You might
but
characterize things differently.
As long as you know it and can be that self-aware of what it is, then you can start to act on those things and know how they play out.
100%. So let's give listeners some tools here because you're really good at this. What, we talked about the core values heavily. How are some, and you gave some examples of, there's lists out there. What are some easy ways for people to really start building the self-awareness to find okay, I don't know what my core values are. Let's say somebody's listening, they don't know what their core values are. I want to find them. How do I even go about starting to figure out and being more self-aware to find these core values so I can start feeding them and find the purpose and find the meaning?
Yeah, so obviously you can Google just list of core values and kind of go through that process. I would encourage you to not do it alone. Okay. A person that really knows you and can help you group them. Obviously, the highlighting ones that are important to you, that's on you. But when it comes to putting them on the Post-it notes and stuff like that, have someone that you really trust and knows you, so they can be like, well, this one's meaningful to me. This one means a lot to me. And you're like, okay, how do you see that one in your life? How do you live that value? Right? And then you say, okay, well, to me, faith is about having a relationship with God. Okay, you said the word relationship. Well, what about family? What does that mean to you? It's about having a good relationship with my kids and my wife. Okay, now we start to see that pattern, right? It helps you kind of talk it out and have someone else with a different perspective help you to get those narrowed in.
And it's going to be a process. It's not like you're going to sit down in 30 minutes, flip through Google and be like, oh, yep, these two with these three mean a lot to me. Like, make it a process. Make it a journey of digging deeper, because when we truly talk about self-awareness, part of that is finding some of these whys. And for me, it's funny because, and we're going to get into this, it's funny how struggle helps you become more self-aware. And so when you're struggling in life a little bit or going through these changes and adjustments, and you're by yourself a little bit and you get to spend some time alone, and how you can start asking, for me it was start asking myself, why am I the way I am? Or why do I do these certain things? Or why do I think like this? And it starts pulling you back to maybe some childhood memories that you've never really thought of, some experiences. And I had a couple months in the summer where I was transitioning from being employed to being self-employed, where I was driving back 3.5 hours to work for my dad to make some extra cash to pay my bills. And I sat on a mower by myself a lot that summer, where I was just
talking to yourself and
talking to myself. And I really started thinking about some of these things of why do I like to encourage people? I don't always encourage myself, but I love to I like to encourage people. That's why I'm a trainer.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do I do that? And was I just born that way? Was that just a gift God made me? Of course, maybe that definitely is a trait. But I really got thinking, I'm dude, it goes back to 4th grade. I started thinking about 4th grade basketball, 5th grade basketball. When we had 8 kids on the team or 9 kids on the team, and we would travel to Rapid City or to Pier for a Y tournament, and my dad was at all the games. My dad took us everywhere. My dad was always there, and he was always there after the game for me to give me a hug and to tell me how great of a job I did, or that I did this great or this great. And I got to thinking I noticed that, and I noticed that 5 of the kids on my team, that their parent wasn't there after the game to give them a hug and to say, dude, you worked really hard that game. You did great. And I noticed that as a 10-year-old, or whatever age it was. And so for who knows why I noticed it, don't know why. And I didn't even know then that I did.
Yep.
It took me to be 30 years old to realize what it was. And so what did I do then? Okay, I started during the game really pumping up my if somebody actually made a layup or did something good, I would always high-five them. And after the games, I'd always high-five those, and I always made it a point, not just everybody, but I knew the kids that needed it. I knew my friends and they weren't really necessarily your friends, they were on your team. He lived in a small town. You were friends with everybody. But you know what I mean? But I just made it a point, and all that stuff carried and compounded into who I turned into.
Yep.
But it's when you can start spending some time alone a little bit and digging deeper, I think that'll help you find some of those values of the why, answering whys.
So that's a great point. The other big tool that we usually recommend for working with some of these things is journaling. Just anytime a situation happens, right? It might come to a point where, you know what, after every meeting, I have an hour-long meeting, I'm going to schedule 10 minutes after that so I can just write down my reflections of it, right?
Yeah.
And it might be 5 sentences, it might be a whole page and a half, whatever it is, but you start journaling, right? And then that next day, you can go back and read that journal and be like, man, once you've cooled down and once you're out of the emotion, be able to look at that and go, all right, maybe I was a little bit emotional there. Maybe I was inflecting some of my feelings and they didn't mean it that way, things like that. But that really helps some of that self-awareness.
And it's funny because my journaling was when I started my podcast or started vlogging.
Yeah.
It was my way of talking to myself.
Yep.
It really, yes, it was putting out information or putting out what I thought to be things that could help people. But really, it was just a moment in time that I needed to talk to myself.
Well, I remember your 100th episode was kind of a review of that.
Yeah, and it was just that, at the moment, it was my way of talking my way through it.
Yep.
You know? And if you go back, don't go back, but, you go back and listen to some of the early stuff, you can tell. There was challenging things I was going through, or there was something that I had a chip on my shoulder about, or I was pissed off about, you could tell in those times, and I always tried to spin it to something motivation or a go-getter, but it was just my way of journaling and my way of getting through challenge.
Exactly.
And
the other thing that I want to touch on real quick is you had that experience where you got to be that self-aware and trace it back to what started this, and that's actually, although we were on different journeys, that's how I ended up getting to mine too. And it's not, if those of you who are like, well, I didn't have a great childhood or things like that, it doesn't have to be. And not to say that mine wasn't a great childhood, but when I was 11, our family went through a hunting accident. My sister got shot. And spent 6 weeks in the hospital here in Sioux Falls. I grew up in Chamberlain. So I was 11, my brother was 9, and my sister was 6. We had a hunting accident, she got shot, she spent 6 weeks or so in there. But then obviously after that, multiple surgeries, broken legs, things like all of the adjustments and all of the attention given to her at a time when I was the one who was holding the gun. I was the one who, that accidentally shot her. I didn't know how to process that, and I needed people, right?
Yep.
I didn't know how to do that as an 11-year-old, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with how as a parent, you handle things you know how to handle, right? And I'm not saying anything bad about or change anything because it's made me who I am today, but what I've had to realize out of myself is that personal excellence thing came from always trying to find value.
Yep.
Right? My sister obviously got the most attention in that situation, and she should have. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
She should have the attention there. She should be taken care of and things like. I'm not saying not, but I had to try and find ways to get attention that I needed in this situation, right?
Because you have to remember, you're a little boy.
Yep. And I'm just getting into puberty.
Yep.
The flood of emotions and the still growing stuff, right? I found the way to do that as I'm going to be the smartest one in this room. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be able to argue anything you said, right? I remember we were at a family counseling thing, and it's a stupid argument now, but I was emotional, I was upset, and I remember looking at my mom and yelling, "Yeah, well, you don't even know what the color yellow on a stoplight means. It means slow down, and you just step on the gas to speed up to get through it." And I'm like, all right, now I'm like, yeah, well, yellow does mean speed up to get through that light, but
let's get out of the way.
but I can look back and say that wasn't a good time, right? Like, you're talking about being able to see my dad encouraging me, and again, I'm not saying that mine didn't, but being able to see my dad encouraging me and knowing that I needed to help those other people. That was a positive experience that tied that value to, right? Yep. Mine necessarily wasn't a positive experience, but it really showed where that value started, right?
Yes.
Getting back to that root, getting back to that meaning of, look, here's all of this stuff.
Yep.
And in order to assign, right, like we go back to the table metaphor where it's analogy, one of the two. I don't never get to. You go back to that. You have all of this stuff, and you got to figure out what the meaning of it is, so that you can see what the purpose it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to like, and it's a rumble. Like,
yes.
If we're looking at for resources, I would encourage people to read the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. It really helped jumpstart a lot of this stuff. It's not gospel, but it's really good.
Yeah.
But she talks in that book a lot about the Theodore Roosevelt speech, "Man in the Arena."
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
And
if you haven't read it, read it because
it is great.
I need to get like a framed picture in here of that on the wall. Because it's the epitome of like the live beyond average.
Yeah.
Like it really
exactly.
is. Yep.
It's not the man who's in. It's not the critic that counts. It's the man who's in the arena, giving his all, trying everything. Right? That's the person that matters. So if at the end of the day, if you can say that I've tried everything, right? But it's a battle to go into that think of that gladiator in an arena, right? I'm the only one there. And here comes like 50 lions, and everyone in the stands is waiting for me to fail. They just came to see a lion tear dude apart.
Yep.
And I'm standing there, everything's staring down on me, and I'm saying, I gotta fight my way out of this.
Yep.
That's what this being self-aware is. That's what this living with vulnerability is. That's what this finding purpose in life and all that stuff is I'm sitting there. Everything wants me to lose. And that's a generalization, but everything wants me to lose. And I got to find a way to be vulnerable and say, I can recognize that lion's going to come at me from behind, so I know that that's where I need to improve. Right? And that's how we get through it. It doesn't matter who's sitting on Twitter saying, oh, you spelled this wrong, or oh, you don't even know what this concept is about. Cool. Whatever, dude. I hope you found meaning in that. But I really, really more hope that you can take what I've said and it plants a seed. Maybe I'm not meant to harvest that seed, but hopefully it plants a seed and you just continue thinking about that.
Right. And yeah, for anybody who wants to start gaining in that realm, like doing some reading on like Teddy Roosevelt stuff and, just looking at how, what he went through and like how he lived his life with that, like it's a great testament of, going through struggle or challenge because that's what he did. So it's pretty cool. And going against like knowing people, in his case, like being against you or whatever it is, like he did a lot of that, but he also was obviously very well loved by anybody that was close to him.
Yep.
And so it was really cool. It's a cool story, like doing some history on him is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It'll pump you up a little bit, which is always needed. Like, and that's the thing too, like, we go through all this stuff, like I was just talking to a buddy about this at the gym yesterday, and like we were talking about some movies, and we were talking about like The Patriot and Braveheart and like Rocky and like all these movies. I'm like, dude, more people just need to freaking go watch Rocky and go watch Braveheart, like, and go watch The Patriot, like, and go like they're so, because you talk about like, yeah, you just feel down about stuff or you're like, consuming on social media, like, dude, go watch something BA and like get pumped up, like get some positivity. And like to me, like, yeah, watching Rocky or watching those movies that just pump you up, or there's a positive message behind it. Like it gives you some temporary like pump up. It's not, it's not like you're making, don't think of it as you're making actual like change in your life by watching one of these movies, but like it's still about what you're consuming, right? Like it consumes some stuff that pumps you up and excites you, or find that listen that gets you going. It's funny, we talk about social media, how it's like, yeah, you think you're trying to get behind stuff in here. It's like, it's ironic because what do we do as a business, right? We're on social media trying to get people to get behind a cause. The difference is like we try to be a positive cause, right? but it's still knowing and being self-aware of like where to stop.
Well,
where to pull yourself away from, okay, I got it, I got what I needed, turn it off.
And the catch-22 of that is yes, as a business you're going out looking for that, but your intent is that we're giving that people, it's like with this podcast, with your lives, with the content that you put on the internet, right? You're trying to give people that meaning to congregate to.
Yep.
You're not trying to get people void of meaning to just come here, right?
Yeah, we're trying to help you pull out a greater purpose,
right?
Which is what this podcast is about.
Right, you're putting your purpose out. Yeah. You're putting the reason that people come to you.
Yeah.
And building an atmosphere that way.
Well, I kind of want to close on some of this too, like some background. Like we kind of touched on how we met, like all the way back in college, and so we were friends. Like so people kind of know like, and how we got on this subject is really cool. So we were friends all through college, after college, like...
I lived in your basement for a couple months.
Lived in my basement. Yeah, like I was in your wedding. Like we were friends after college for a number of years. And then, you know, we talk about relationships, talk about growing pains. Like we grew apart for a number of years. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because it's a similar story to me and Devin. And he was one of those guys too that, you know, young friend, all through life. And like, you know, and I'm giving this as an example of like stages in your life, and we totally grew apart. And then it was funny. We got to this point randomly. What has been over a year ago now? We got back. We went out.
It was actually
It was about a year
ago.
Yeah, about a year ago. Went out for lunch and kind of reconnected. And we sat down kind of like this at the lunch table. It was supposed to be like 20-minute lunch.
Yeah,
I think we were there for like 2 hours. And
I mean, no, it was a work day. I wasn't there for 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. And we just literally like were men about things. And we put stuff on the table because neither one of us knew why we weren't friends at that moment. We just knew that we weren't really friends anymore.
Yep.
And we just put things on the table, and it was really funny because we learned about each other that we were both going through almost identical things when it came to just, like you mentioned it as identity crisis. And it was kind of like basically the same thing for me, right? You're going through a change in career, figuring out things in life. And we started like just like telling our stories to each other, and it was like, oh wow, like it wasn't you and it wasn't me really, it was just we were going through things, and for both of us we weren't capable of being that opposite thing for the friend at that moment.
Right.
Like we weren't like, and I think about that with a couple of my other friends now, and and it's because of this situation that I've learned it, where I know I'm not capable of being the friend they need right now. And it makes me feel bad a little bit, but at the same time, I know it's okay. Because I know in some relationships, I don't have what it takes right now to be what that person needs, and that's not my fault.
Right.
Like, and it's not their fault, but it's just something like communicate about.
It just is.
It just is. Like we're not always capable of providing what somebody else has in their mind. You know what I mean? Like you're not, and I like to use this term a little bit, and it doesn't really fit perfectly in the situation, but just remember as a person, like, you're not responsible for what somebody else thinks of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta let go what the expectation that somebody else has put onto you, because you're not responsible for that. You're responsible for how you act, what you do, and what you're capable of providing.
Well, and I think it does fit, right? So we went to that lunch, and I'll be honest, I stressed about it for a while.
Yeah. What was ironic, so people know, was that I was thinking about this without talking to Jared, and Jared was thinking about it. And Jared was the one who made the first move on it, and actually texted me. But when he texted me, I literally was like, because I was like, wow, this has been on me for like a month or two. Like, I was like, God had it on my heart too for like a couple months, and I just wasn't being obedient, like texting you, and then you were the one who reached out, and I was like, okay, I get it. Well, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
And I'll be honest, it took a couple months for me too. Like,
yep.
Again, you're in my wedding. Like, looking at those different pictures that pop up as memories on Facebook.
Right.
Or, you know, like, man, nobody in my wedding picture, none of my groomsmen, I talk to anymore. I mean, for various different reasons.
Sure.
But like,
again, life
man, like that hurts. You know, and it finally got to a point where we're still connected on Snapchat or whatever, but I was in Kansas City for a military school.
Yep.
And you were at the Chiefs NFC Championship game?
We were at the
the division game.
It was the division game against
AFC,
Houston.
AFC, but yeah.
The
anyway,
Houston game, which was crazy, by the way.
So I was at it was, but I kept seeing his Snapchats, right? And I'm down in Kansas City, and I was like,
we're minutes apart right now.
Right, like we're 5 hours away from home, and we're the closest we've been in a long time. Like,
yeah,
you know what? Maybe it's just time to reach out. And it was hard, and it was like I came into there, and this is where even I talk about like living with vulnerability. Like coming into that, I was like, dude, I don't know why we've grown apart. If it's something I did, then I'm sorry. But if it's something that you can't get over, then fine, we're done. Right?
Yeah, right.
But
right.
you can't come in with that
no.
type of conversation.
We didn't even know how to really talk to each other when
we just kind of sat there. And,
hey, like, let's go get something. Let's order.
Yeah.
Kind of like forcing conversation. Yep. Like.
And then it was finally like.
We both knew why we were there.
Yep. Dropping that shield and being like, look, dude, I don't know what happened.
Yep.
But I miss my friend.
Yes.
I mean, I miss being able to just go hunt. Right?
Yep. Or just talk on text or whatever.
I don't have to be on film. But we used to love hunting together. Let's go hunt, you know?
Yep.
Or again, that personal the personal excellence value for me, right?
Yep.
Like I've gotten big into archery because archery is something that I'm not great at, but it's something that I can keep improving on.
Yeah.
I mean, and the level of bow that we're shooting, even the slightest torque or anything like that makes that arrow go crazy, you know,
Yep.
but at the range, there's always room to improve. So I'm like, hey, Jordan's a lot better at this than me. What do I, help coach me on this, things like that. Things that build that relationship. But it took coming into there with vulnerability and putting those shields down at the door and saying, I'm not walking in here with if we don't want to be friends anymore, then fine, I'm out. It was, look, dude, let's get to the bottom of it. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, I was the first person. I keep thinking about this. In college, the apartment below you started on fire.
Yep.
And you're like, it's like 4:30 in the morning, and you're like, dude, can you come get me? And I just remember pulling up, and you're on that picnic table outside, holding Cosmo, and just pissed off face, and hood up, and just got in the pickup with me, and we drove back. And he slept on the couch for a while, and whatever. We went back, and it was like, I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Like it's just
100% just what you do.
We were close enough friends to the point where I was your first call.
Yep.
And we've grown to the part where it's like, I don't know, what started it, but we were just there.
Yep.
And then we just had to come in with that conversation like, look, we're too good of friends to just let this die.
Yep, exactly. And from a standpoint of like, having similar core values, having same, the ultimate goals in life, in what, we know why we're here on Earth for, things like that. Like, we knew, like, there should be, we are the type of men that should be supporting type of men like that. Like, and you just,
it's just heavy.
It's tough. Yeah. And
it's heavy to keep carrying that weight.
Yep.
Like, it's exhausting to continue to look at a post and be like, it's Jordan,
Yep, dude, I get it.
It's just heavy.
Yep.
It sucks.
It's growth in life, and just like, and I think, dude, and like you said, and we've talked about at the beginning of the podcast, it brings out way more manliness.
Oh,
like, you think about like, going to that meeting, like I'm giving up power and manliness by sitting down and trying to get this worked out. Like I'm submissing to do that. Like, no, it takes way more of a man and brings out way more manliness to resolve problems, to build the relationships back, and to do all those things. Like, that takes manliness and toughness and grit and all those things that we think about that's manly.
Well, and even, as 2020 is bound to show us, 2 weeks left in the year, it's still bound to show us that we need those vulnerably courageous things, right? Like, man, there is so much tribalism and discord because of politics and masking and vaccines and COVID and all of this stuff, right? And it's just so polarizing to be able to use that trait of coming in with vulnerability and being like, maybe I'm not right, right? I have these beliefs, and maybe I'm not right.
Yeah.
But can we have a vulnerable conversation? Because that takes courage.
Yep.
Right? Think about it. It takes courage to go into a medical professional and say, can you explain why wearing a cloth mask works to me? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yep.
Right? It takes courage because that person's seeing things differently than you and whatever. But it's not coming in and I'm not going to try and argue to you that masks don't work. I'm just coming in saying, please help me understand. I'm going to be vulnerable.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Man, the amount of places that please help me understand why you think this politically. Please help me understand. This is what I see. What do you see? And it's not an I gotcha. It's I just want to see things from the other side so that I can make that, you talk about, a good character. The personal, like, I want to be able to make the best decision for myself, for my family. Can you help me see something differently than I see it now?
Yeah.
And if not, I mean, that's cool. But
yeah, it doesn't mean you're going to see it differently. But, yeah, go into it. And I know that's one of my toughest things. I can be very polarizing in my beliefs. Like, I know I can. I'm not blind to it. Like, I believe, like, things that line up with my core values. And I'm, like, all in on stuff. And I'm very much, that is my personality. And 2020 has tested that for me. And really, like, brought that out where I'm like, no, I want to be, like, in certain areas, I want to be polarizing and hard on some of my beliefs because I don't want to back away from my line.
Yep.
I want my line. I think about our founding fathers and certain things, and I'm like, gosh, if they would have backed away from their line, we wouldn't be here right now.
Absolutely.
And so I really look to some of those things, but I also know how it can be detrimental in certain things. Like, I know the conversations me and my wife has had that she's not as... She, you know what I mean? She doesn't want to be as polarizing in some of those things, but she believes the exact same thing as me. And I want her to be as patriotic or as stand up on that line as me, but without, supportive courage, that's not necessarily a possibility. Like, without me standing beside her and encouraging that. Like, and so it's just about learning and how, like, okay, I'm being way too polarizing in our conversations about that. So you have to be self-aware on, okay, how do I get people to come alongside me? Like, because if you're over-polarizing, you don't have anybody come alongside you and stand up with your line. So then what's your purpose? What's the meaning behind it? Well, you're going to be there by yourself.
Yep.
And so, like, okay, how do I communicate those purposes and meanings to get people to come stand up on the line with me?
And then again, even doing that, you tie in that other one of relationship, right?
Exactly.
If you're too polarizing, it goes back to self-awareness.
Yep.
Right? It's just, man.
It's cool.
It all ties together.
It all ties together. And as you're getting into this, I think you're going to find that same thing, and you're going to start finding these conversations and these things to battle with, and like those relationship connection points with other people that are going to help you grow to these same points and help you go beyond within yourself, which then in turn you guys help build your business, help build your relationships with your wife or your husband or in your faith. Like, it all snowballs. Positivity comes from it. And then people who are around you feed off of it.
Yeah.
So, dude, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah.
That was awesome. We're going to do some more of these for sure because I know you're going to be at home subject lining more stuff. And so, because I know your personality. So, so it's going to be awesome. We'll have more stuff coming. Obviously, not all of our podcasts are, some of them are, some of them are deep. Some, I think this one has a good combination of like some deep stuff, some fun stuff, and I liked it.
Yeah.
It was good. So, of course, if you guys felt like you benefited off of it and you know somebody that needs to listen to it too, from a small business aspect, it means a lot to us when you share it with somebody else or you give it a comment, a like, share it in your Instagram story, whatever that is. We hope you have a great rest of your week and crush the rest of 2020.